Hi folks, thanks for joining. My name is Andrew Butcher. For those of you who I haven't met or don't know, I'm the CEO of GTECH Strategies. We're a Larimer-based social enterprise. We work very much at the intersection of community development and the green economy, with a healthy level of social innovation sprinkled into the mix. So thank you so much for coming this evening to tonight's Social Technovation 412. It's a pretty exciting dialogue that we've got planned, very much looking at how a range of different media and technology can be a community development driver. And our goal is very much to try to connect activities happening in the community development sector with a range of exciting things that are happening in the technology sector. So I have a couple of quick announcements, and then we're going to hop into a panel discussion. There's going to be some time for questions afterwards. Real quickly, I just wanted to thank our hosts here at the Tech Shop and our other partners and supporters of this event, Marty's Market and the Hop Farm, for providing delicious food and delicious beer. And of course to our panelists, who I'm so rudely standing right in front of. Thanks for your understanding. And also just to call your attention to a couple of small, quick things around the event, a couple of logistics. That's my job. First of all, our fifth panelist tonight, Elwin Green from Homewood Nation, was unable to join us. He's had a death in the family. He's obviously in our thoughts, and what I can do is plug his organization and the project that he runs called Homewood Nation. If you're not familiar with it, it's a fantastic blog and dialogue around what's happening in the Homewood community, with a very unique use of social media. Also, I wanted to call attention to a very exciting event on June 1st, the City Spree, which is an event hosted by City of Play in collaboration with GTECH and the Tech Shop. There's not a lot to say about it other than it's going to be an extremely fun, active day outside. It'll be happening in the East End, and you can find out more at City of Play. Pittsburgh. cityofplay.org. There's some information in the back around that as well. Lastly, I want to highlight that today's event is a result of a group that GTECH convenes called the Social Capital Council. The Social Capital Council works very much to cultivate social capital in Pittsburgh to fuel social innovation. Right? We work at the intersection of a couple of different sectors and are very passionate about connecting to people that want to connect to like-minded individuals to move exciting things forward in the city. To that extent, I'd like to thank two of our partners today, both Kit Mueller, who will be introduced more formally in just a minute, who's an SCC partner, as well as Bethany Blois, right here, who is a key organizer of the event and a GTECH supporter and strong member of the Social Capital Council. Lastly, I'd like to introduce co-chair of the Social Capital Council, Chelsea Burkett, with Fourth Economy, who is also a member of GTECH's Board of Directors.
Thank you. So as Andrew said, this event is coordinated in part by the Social Capital Council, and I don't know about you guys, but we found that social capital, more so than intellectual capital or financial capital, is really a key to building trust, opening lines of information, leading to action, leading to happiness and wealth. And so the Social Capital Council is a group of professionals who are socially motivated or conscious and maybe don't get a chance to work in the community development and environmental world in their day jobs, and so have chosen to join this group to support GTECH, to learn more about the field at events like this, to get some experience working with nonprofits, and to build their networks. In short, building their own social capital and the social capital of GTECH. So if you're interested more in what the Social Capital Council is and how you can get involved, you could talk to myself or to Andrew. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kit, who is a mover and shaker about town, involved very much at the intersection of technology-based economic development and social innovation, and he is going to be guiding our conversation this evening.
Thank you. Do I need this? Do I need this? Josh, do I need this for?
No, not at all. Just be loud.
This makes me sing like karaoke. All right, well, please give yourselves a round of applause for coming out tonight, guys. Anyway, first of all, I was like when Andrew and I first started talking about this, and it kind of came out of he spends all his time at the intersection of the green economy as a nonprofit and innovation, and I spend a lot of my time through Rustbelt, which is a nonprofit that is supposed to is charged with bolstering innovation and startups throughout the region, and so I spend a lot of my time with startups specifically in the tech space. In my role as a nonprofit. So I think a lot of the times in Pittsburgh we have these we kind of have that legacy strength of the massive private wealth that has become the nonprofit arena and the foundations and community support, and then we have the promise of startups and all this tech innovation and everything, right? And I think a lot of times those conversations are had at the same time, but I don't think those communities often have a chance to interact. So here we are. So the point of tonight is we've assembled an all-star cast, and I'll let each of them introduce themselves, and I'll start with Tracy Serto. Tracy, would you like to say something?
I would, thank you. Hi, I'm Tracy Serto, and I am founder, publisher, and editor of Next Pittsburgh, which is an online magazine that debuted in March. For 8 years, I was publisher and editor of another online magazine in town. And the reason I started this one was we wanted to do something that was Pittsburgh born, Pittsburgh bred. Really, our only focus is on this city and this region. It's all about the people taking Pittsburgh to the next level. We're big on social innovation. We're big on social capital. We're big on connections and collaborations in any sector, whether it's arts and culture, technology, innovation, any kind of community and nonprofit news. We cover a lot of ground not every single week, but just about every single day. We're publishing. We push out once a week, but we publish daily. And we're all about, like I said, moving the community forward by profiling the people who are doing it, as well as making connections and collaborations on our own. We're doing events now. We had our first one last night, for instance. We had kind of a Meet the Artist event. We're going to be doing more. Meet the tech community, meet this kind of group or that sector, but mostly we want to get people in the same room who have not connected and hope to spark some collaborations and some new things.
Awesome. Thanks, Tracy. Glad you're here. Josh, would you like to give a little background on yourself?
Hi, I'm Josh Lucas. I am the founder of Crowdosaurce, which seeks to build a regional crowdfunding ecosystem here in the city of Pittsburgh, and to do that we try to find appropriate partners and organizations who have the bully pulpit, who have networks that can extend and help build some capacity for people that are looking at crowdfunding as a way to solve some of the city's problems, as well as some of the problems that startups and nonprofits might have. I also run a co-working space up in Allentown called The Hardware Store, and we provide a home and incubation primarily for folks in the digital service industry. So a lot of the people that occupy our co-working space are videographers, animators, graphic designers. We have a couple software firms as well, but most of our emphasis is on a home for people that are in that freelance sector of the tech industry. And we work a lot up there to revitalize that neighborhood and think about how a space like that, a co-working space, can do more to contribute to the revitalization of that essential corridor up on the hilltop.
Awesome. Josh, glad you're here. Elaine, would you like to give a little background, folks?
My name is Elaine Singh. I actually work for GTECH Strategies as the Operations Policy and Research Director. So as Andrew mentioned, we really work with both people and places to really find what others consider liabilities. We turn those into opportunities and help people sort of take ownership of social issues and help them imagine some other alternatives to those things. It's a job that I really love and I'm very passionate about, and kind of allows me to use the range of skills that I've gained. I started out my career as a landscape architect in a design firm, went through school for policy, and so I'm able to really kind of cross a lot of boundaries. And as the previous two have mentioned, it's just a lot about bringing people together and connecting and filling holes. So we all have something that is useful to someone else, and sometimes it's just about translating those needs to other people. So.
Awesome. Mary, back here. Would you like to give a little background?
Sure, I'm Lacey Carrick. I work for Evive Station, and Evive is, we gave everybody these bottles, but we developed a kiosk that is able to clean and refill these bottles with chilled filtered water. So a lot of people carry around reusable bottles and don't ever clean them or don't have an opportunity to clean them on the go, and we kind of provide the vehicle that makes that a little easier when you're at the office or at the gym. And our story is that, you know, there's 50 billion single-use bottles that go into landfills annually, and that leaves an impact for us and future generations. So we want people to see that impact and how by just using one bottle, you know, over and over, you're able to make your own social impact, you know, as an individual. So we started in Pittsburgh in 2011 and have come a very long way. And this city is, I've lived in other cities that, you know, seem larger, but the support for local businesses and startups in this city, there's something more about people taking individual ownership, and, you know, there's a certain hustle here that I haven't seen in other cities. So I'm very happy to be back in Pittsburgh and love working for a company that's trying to make its footprint not only here, but then expand to other regions.
Awesome. You give it up for our panel. We've assembled a great group of folks here. We also like you can, we will have a Q&A at the end. We'll go through a brief discussion, and I'll try to keep moving forward. If you have questions at any time, you can either hold them at the end, or you can tweet to any of the Twitter handles on the screen over here. Can everybody read those okay? And can everybody hear our panelists okay? All right, awesome. So we've kind of given, you know, a little background about our respective firms and missions and goals and what we're doing. So I think it's important to kind of say what we're trying to do tonight is intentionally force a cross-section of each of those respective spaces, the nonprofit and the tech and the innovation sector. What could be some other ways we could be deliberately making each of the respective spaces more aware and knowledgeable about each other? And I'll let Tracy kick it off.
Well, I think actually that's kind of our job too. We're always looking for groups, individuals who are doing unique, different things in the city. Some of our collaborations, our connections are unintentional, which are often kind of the best, and others are more deliberate. But we search out news. We try to find out what's going on in the community, and we are always really very welcome to or open to suggestions and ideas about stories. But even beyond that, like ideas for events, we have so many people in this community doing so many cool things. We like showcasing them, spotlighting them, and getting different people to be more aware of them. So I would think, I know my role in coming here, I was trying to think how Next Pittsburgh can best help you. Now you guys have come here and you're spending good time in front of us, you know, to listen to us, and that's very, very nice, and we're very appreciative. But I think as my role in the media, I think we can be very helpful to you in terms of story ideas and suggestions and events and various things like that. Even to the point that, like, you know, our stories that we do, if you want to comment on them, or make suggestions, or write on the stories, we're always looking for that. We're trying to create like an online community, which I think would really benefit you and your organizations.
Just gonna go online?
I'm going to go down the line on this one.
Cool. So, you know, I think it comes down to hashtag activism, right? Like, I think that people need to stop tweeting about things and physically go to something that they care about, whether it's a nonprofit or if a nonprofit needs to go and take a moment to engage. And then through those real people conversations is when we've experienced things getting done. You know, everybody has very busy days. Everybody's schedule is jam-packed. But the synergy and the connections that we make in our business with nonprofits and in the community at large really helps our business grow. So every time we do an act of altruism, every time, whether it's the hardware store or crowdsource, puts aside sort of the fiscal bottom line and goes instead and offers something freely, it comes back on us tenfold. So I think that if I was going to say something about, what do nonprofits and startups and the tech community need to do better, it's to stop tweeting at each other and to go say, what is this thing that you need? And then we will help you get this thing that you need because we have the resources to do that.
I think for me, it's, I would say, sort of get out of your comfort zone. So I think every connection that we make is useful in some way. Every person can offer something to someone. And so, as a nonprofit doing sort of environmentally focused social change, we dive into that space and we're on the ground with shovels and we're digging in the dirt. And we don't think that necessarily that maybe an app or something like that can help us do that work. But what it can do is, alert people that we're outside and have other people see that and want to come join us. Or it, alerts people that we're short on funding and people can donate. And so it's understanding that those connections are there. And I think just coming to events like this, or, I presented, I think, to the Pittsburgh Code of America Brigade and was talking to them about a platform we're using, and I was just like, I hope no one asks how it works. I just know what it does. And so it's just kind of going to those places where you might find someone that can be of use, and again, what can we do for people that we meet as well.
To add to those 2 points, I think it's really important not to pigeonhole yourself based on, we're tech, we can't get involved in that. I think that there's a lot of opportunity in the city and you have to be open to all of them. You obviously can't do everything, but I think what's important is when you're especially in a startup, when you're building your team, the people you hire and the ground level are going to determine how the company goes. And we've made a point to hire very passionate people that all have some similarities but a lot of differences, and everybody has something different that's important to them or makes them tick. And it's important to listen internally to your team when they say, this event's important to me and here's why I think we should get involved. And by just getting involved with different nonprofits throughout the city, we have gained exposure that we never would have and met people that have been so valuable to our company's success. So I think that if you put yourself in a position where you think, we don't have anything to do with that, or it's going to hold you back more than taking the time to go do these events, because ultimately they're going to result in a more successful and well-rounded business and team.
So having given all those good answers, I think that there's a natural conflict between innovation and the nonprofit world, right? I think that innovation itself is always meant to disrupt. And by that I mean, it's meant to upset the apple cart, and traditionally nonprofit is meant to make sure that apple cart feeds people, right? And so I'm wondering how can those two worlds not only just coexist, but how can those worlds be 1 + 1 = 3? How can they benefit each other for the greater good with their natural conflict? Anybody want to take that?
Yeah, I'll take that.
Okay.
So I think I would say I maybe disagree a little bit. So mentioning nonprofits' job is to make sure people are fed. Well, if people are not being fed, then the system is maybe broken. And so upsetting the system is a good thing. And so some of the social challenges that we face in communities often require the most creative solutions because the status quo isn't working, or maybe, circumstances have changed where the status quo isn't working. So I think that's actually an argument for innovation to be brought in more often. And there may be some things that need to be changed around that, but, we adapt and accommodate.
Cool. Anybody else want to comment on it?
I think it's about reducing the barrier to entry. So I think that whether you're in the nonprofit space or the entrepreneurial space, you have a set of ideas about how things are going to work. And the more that we make visible these successful relationships that are going on in the city, I think that more people will have buy-in around that sort of idea.
Cool. So we need some early wins.
Yeah.
Cool.
Although I also think too that the community has to be more open to failure, and the fact that we need to try new things, and some of them aren't going to work. I know foundations are really into that kind of thinking. Some of them are really cool about, we're going to try this. It might not be effective, but let's see what works and what doesn't. And I think as a community, if we can embrace that kind of thinking more, I think we would all be better off if people feel more open to making kind of innovative changes and see what happens, experimental.
Lacey, you want to say anything?
I was just going to say from the standpoint of, being in a startup and having investors that have put a lot of money
I
into
also
their
think
company,
too that
sometimes
the
it doesn't
community
always
has to
seem
be-
like the easiest thing to get involved in nonprofits and social groups. And I think for us, it's more managing expectations and what you actually can do. And as you were saying about, being able to tweet at each other, yeah, that only goes so far. And then actually having these conversations and saying, well, we can offer this. We might not be able to give you this, but this is how we can help. And thinking of innovative ways that you can work together that might not be traditional, but ultimately all parties are able to benefit. I think it's bridging that gap between, what you actually can do and what's feasible for everyone involved.
And sometimes it's not the obvious thing that
Right,
you can
you
do,
have to
right?
think
Like, it's
about
not like, hey, here's some water bottles,
Yeah.
right? It's like, you can do something
Yeah.
deep and meaningful for them that's almost tangential
Yes.
to what your business is.
You have to be creative.
Well, I think early in the conversation with Andrew and I, when we were talking about this, I think we also have to realize, like, we as a city have come very far on both fronts, right? I think I have a unique perspective of having built companies here in the late 90s, and then left and come back. And I know that, frankly, the dialogue has moved forward. There's a lot more going on both fronts. And frankly, I've never been more excited to be in Pittsburgh because of those two things, right? I think the two worlds are starting to not just be aware of each other, but the conversations are starting to come on. The risk-taking has somewhat been slightly imbued into the nonprofit thinking, and some of the foundations are, there's more inbound on our companies and organizations on maybe you have a problem, and like I said, it's okay if it fails, and we'll do it. We'll mitigate the risk. So I know there's a lot of cool stuff, and I think you guys each have a unique perspective. So I'd ask for your favorite or best example of where those worlds are colliding and make each other better, and it's okay to humble brag up there. Anybody want to take it? Lacey, I'll let you go first.
Oh, great. I think that one of the things that we face is like you were saying earlier, we've disrupted how people are doing something every day. I mean, everyone's drinking water, and we might not necessarily be solving a problem, but when we go back to our team, we really truly believe that we're solving a problem, whether people know this problem exists or not. And I think in Pittsburgh, we've had to kind of teach people and educate what that problem is. And I think that we've done a good job, but our problem that we face, the challenge as a company, is that we don't have a tentpole customer, right? Because everybody drinks water. So everybody has a different hot button, whether, being an eVibe member, it's saving money or it's saving the planet, or they just think we have really delicious tasting water, or it's convenient. I think you have to find what that balance is. And it's sometimes really tough. But at the end of the day, when we go out and do events, or we are set up near a station and we teach people, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, and this is why you should be a part of it. There's that sense of community that we get, and it becomes something really exciting. And you want to talk about it, and you want to tell other people. And sometimes people tell you your idea is really stupid, and they're not going to buy your stupid water. And they're holding a bottle of water, and you're like, okay, great, we're not for you. You can drink that. And I think you have to, like you were saying, you have to be able to fail and just, be able to take. You have one idea and you think it's really great, and then you go out and take it to other people and consumers, and they say, that's not so great. And so you innovate and you find ways to change it and make it work.
Well, one of the awesome things that I see a couple of entrepreneurs every day. I see dozens of business plans a week. More and more, it's becoming one of the check boxes of when you're formulating a business plan or a go-to-market strategy at all, is having an altruistic bent. Where we're achieving shareholder return and we're changing the world and building a better mousetrap, but are we also improving the world that we're in? I'm seeing that in 9/10 of the initiatives that I'm at least being shown. So you're a perfect example, right? I mean, not just double bottom line companies, but companies that actually have a for-profit mission that actually has an altruistic bent,
Right.
like yours. It's
So
awesome.
I don't know if that answered the question,
Yeah, sure.
but
Yeah.
that's not different.
Anybody else seen great examples of
Well-
nonprofit and tech collide?
I'll mention one last night. It's kind of like the last joke you heard. The last thing I did was an event last night. Next Pittsburgh hosted an event. It was really kind of a meet the artist event where we had 6 really talented, successful artists here in Pittsburgh, and we held it at the Mind Factory, which is a space that a lot of people are not familiar with. So we brought people into a new space. It was a little raw getting in, but once you're inside, it was very cool. And some of the comments that we heard, because we didn't want just the arts community going. We really tried to reach out to people and said, you know, it might be cool if you come or if you come. And someone I invited as special guest was a banker, a very buttoned up kind of banker. And she emailed me this morning and she said it was so cool going to your event. She copied her boss, the president of the bank. And she said it was an entirely new crowd to me. She said I didn't know hardly anyone in the room, and this is a woman who's very well connected. But she made connections while she was there. We encouraged people. We introduced all the artists. We asked people to talk to them, to get to know them better, and like this is why they're here. And one of the most interesting things to me, someone pointed this out. I didn't even realize it. The artists didn't even know each other. Some of them. We thought they all would know each other. They didn't. So the artists were introducing themselves to each other, and then they were meeting other people in the audience. But it was, again, around that whole, the rich theme of connections, but people were starting to talk to each other and they were coming up with ideas and things were bubbling up and people were saying, well, we need to do an event like this or around that or around something else. So I would encourage any startup or any nonprofit organization to go outside their boundaries and to go, if you're into tech, go to an art kind of event. Or if you're into art, go to a tech kind of event. Mix it up. I think the different perspectives you find are really very stimulating, and I think all kinds of great things can result.
I'd speak for Joe at Get Fit Pittsburgh, right? Like he's taking this very crucial issue of food and health and wellness, and he's doing it in a very kind of bohemian way, but still putting it into the hands of larger organizations and corporations and things like that. So he's walking that blurry line of nonprofit, for-profit, and engaging everyone around this important issue.
I think one of our biggest crossovers, and I think it was mentioned in some of the announcements for the event of technology in the nonprofit, is we're currently using a platform called Local Data, which was a startup tech company out of San Francisco. And something that we're tasked with a lot is assessing communities' vacant land. So not just how much is there, but what does it look like? What is it good for? What is it being used for now? We used to do that by walking around with paper and maps and writing it down and going back to the computer and entering it and then taking it into a GIS or mapping system and trying to tie it back together. And what this platform allows us to do is to take a tablet and pick the parcel that you're on and answer the questions and say submit, and then that information is already mapped for us. So it's something that we looked for an efficiency purpose, but what it's allowed us to do is actually convene other partners around standards of collection and sharing. And now that this data is much more manageable, how can we use it to make some really good real-time decisions? So even though we were looking for an efficiency, we actually gained a whole lot more in sort of capital building and capacity building in this space. So.
That's awesome. And to your point, actually, so data is becoming like the key word out there, right? It's because it's finally being something we can not only quantify but qualify. And I'm seeing a lot of inbound from large nonprofits here saying, what do we do with it? And at the end of it, what does it mean? So to your point, so there's plenty of options. There's plenty of events you can go to. GiveCamp's one where nonprofits seek out techies and they come up with 5 problems. I know that the White House is their Open Data Initiative has a local presence again this year in the form of National Data Civic Hacking that Open Pittsburgh is taking. We did Think-a-thon last year. It was awesome. We let Pittsburghers bitch about 180 things and put people in a room and solve 10 problems in the nonprofit space. It was cool. Okay, so, Pittsburgh just made another list of being the most city on most lists. That was awesome. No, but the point of so before we get talking how awesome we are and how livable and how amazing and whatever, I think that we do need to take a fair assessment of what's going on and celebrate the wins, but be realistic of where we are. So to that regard, where are the big gaps between where we are and where we could be as it relates to this topic?
Equity.
Equity?
Well, I think one area where Pittsburgh is lacking, I think we're all aware of this, is our ethnicity and the fact that we're not attracting enough immigrants. I think it affects very much the tech industry as well as
lowest foreign immigration of any city.
Right. We're really lagging behind. And I know some people are working on that issue, quite a few in fact. but we still don't seem to be making enough ground. Other cities are really climbing ahead of us in that regard too. So I think that's one gap we really need to look at.
So this kind of ties into a question from the audience about what should the cities,
How'd you learn that somebody asked for a question from the audience, Josh?
Twitter?
On the Twitters. Please go ahead and hit the handles up, except for mine and Elvin's.
So the question is sort of how should the city look at failure? Like what should be the measure of, or what should the city's philosophy be around failure? And I think that's the gap right there, kind of summed up. And we see it at like the fail fests that community has. That there's still a degree of resistance and hesitance on people's part to talk openly about what they've done horribly wrong. And express that so that others can learn from it. So I think I'd just go with that.
I think for us, we're seeing, sometimes it is just the little things, it's the logistics, it's the sort of figuring out how to make it happen. I think a lot of us have the same goals, we might not frame them the same way, and it might take us a while to understand that we have the same goals.
Yeah.
But I think in a lot of ways, the people that we interact with want the same things, we just don't quite know how to get there. And yes, we're working together, and maybe more people can be brought into that to move it forward. But I think sometimes it is just sort of someone saying, okay, this is the way it's going to be, we're going to move forward, instead of how best do we do it and who should be brought in. I think sometimes we just have to push forward and make a decision and make it so, and just set the standard and make it new.
Awesome.
Yeah, to that point, I think it has a lot to do with communication or lack of communication. I think there's a lot of people trying to do similar things, and if they aren't using the right tools to speak to other groups, or whether it's social or networking or whatever it may be. I mean, I know I've sent a lot of emails that have never been returned, or a lot of phone calls that have never been returned, and maybe it's the way you're delivering your message and people don't really understand, and then when you are able to get in front of them, then they're like, oh wow, okay, I can get behind this. So I think a lot of it is the communication and how we communicate as a city, and I think that is a little behind the times, maybe.
Sure. Well, so we obviously had an awesome panel up here. We also saw a lot of smart people in the audience, and some might have made a mess. So squeaky wheel gets the oil. So I'm going to turn some of these questions over to you. If you have a question, raise your hand. Or if you have online, you let me know.
Yeah, I'm gonna put the feedback up so you
Sweet.
can actually see that.
Who wants to have the first question?
I've heard social responsibility in the context of nonprofit work,
Sure.
and I think we always defer. I think one of the problems that we have in the city of Pittsburgh, because we have a very healthy philanthropic community, is because we kind of defer to saying that nonprofit groups can solve our social ills. And I'm wondering, maybe the panel could help answer this question. For the young entrepreneurs in the audience, how would you recommend they define their social responsibility as a for-profit entity? And I think there are 3 for-profit companies up here, so I'm wondering if maybe you can define how you started your social mission.
Let's see, when I said my social mission would be really reporting on the people who are doing things in Pittsburgh, which is something that has been really underreported over the years. Although I think the media is changing now. I think even the mainstream media is getting more into this. You don't think so? Or maybe they're not. Anyway, I do know that there's so many stories out there that are still underreported or not reported. And what drives us at Next Pittsburgh is really getting the good news out about a lot of this, so that sometimes we don't have, we can't get something in the news that week, but we'll tweet about it, or we'll post it on Facebook, or we'll use someone else's, we'll take a story from somewhere else and post it. My thinking is the productive failure term was brought up on Twitter, and I like that, as opposed to just failure. We can all learn from each other, and I think that's really important. And finding out whatever others are doing and how we can be of help and support. I do know, we're talking about social responsibility. One thing I found that I really would like to mention here, when I started Next Pittsburgh, I cannot believe the support of the community that I received and my staff too. It was amazing. People were coming out of the woodwork to volunteer their time to help me out. because it was one company in Pittsburgh that they saw us doing good and they wanted to help us. So there was just that outpouring, and it points to the community that's already here and what I think everyone can tap into if you find the right people, the right groups and cohorts for support, and make it happen.
I would say that if you are a young startup, that whatever your social good is going to be, it should be the thing that you're most passionate about, because there's going to be a point in your startup's history where things are going horribly, or you're out of money, or you're out of time, or your staff is running away. And if you have that thing to hang your hat on, if you really did it for the right reason, if you really chose something that you loved and felt strongly about, that can be the thing that's going to carry you through those dark, grim days of startup life. So don't fake it, I guess would be my advice. Don't pick something that you think is going to get you traction as a company. Pick something that you truly love so that it can help you and motivate you to keep your enterprise going forward.
I would say that as a company, we haven't turned a huge profit. So we are very much in a stage where we're still, developing our business model and figuring out how we're even going to make money. But what we've done is gotten involved in a lot of different organizations and nonprofits like Team Tossie and Thread, and gone to their event and provided water, and found something that tied the two of us together. Or we did the Clean Air Dash, and we traded advertising on our stations and did a sponsorship in that way. So even if it's not, oh, here's a check and we're not going to do anything the day of, we have found more of the in-kind sponsorships and actually being on site for their events and being a supporter, or whether it's tweeting about it or marketing. That's how we've been able to be involved in so many different nonprofits, is by engaging in their actual event. Our team, on the weekends, going and working these things, and it helps us spread our word too, but it makes us as better as a whole, because we're out there getting involved, and it's not just we'll give you a financial donation. We're taking our time to make their events more fun and more impactful also. And for we're a for-profit company, but with the double bottom line, like, we want to change people's habits and make people aware of all the waste that goes into the if you look in the river, if you look down the street, all the garbage and trash, and kind of make people aware that that stuff is going somewhere and it's affecting how you live your life. So I think that's how we've kind of taken it on.
One thing I often say to entrepreneurs is sometimes employing people and solving hard problems is a good enough social mission. You don't have to be curing hunger, right? Or at least, I think that sometimes, like, when you're, like I said, all the time now as a part of business plans, I'm saying, like, we're going to do this. And I said, make sure you solve the initial problems of building a company first before you make a promise that you can't keep, right?
So you can be profitable and save the world.
Absolutely. I think being profitable helps save the world. I think
It helps.
being unintentionally a nonprofit as a startup doesn't help anybody. Sir.
Thank you. So Pittsburgh is a notoriously small market, and when a lot of people are striving towards similar goals, do you find that it's helpful or how do you know when to compete versus when to differentiate from your competitors?
You want to take that?
So as a nonprofit, it's always better to partner because capacity is always at a premium. So we always look to share the work that we're doing, not only to spread the work, but also to we love what we do and we want to share that experience with others, and we want to make a bigger impact. So the more people, the more hands we have, hopefully either the faster we work or the bigger we go. I think each organization brings something unique, and we still try to highlight those unique characteristics, but ideally more people is good for us.
I think too, if you think you can do it better, then that's the time to make a move and do something, even though someone else might be in that space, if they're not doing it good enough, and you can deliver a better product or a better service, that might be partnerships.
I think you have to vet carefully So kind of going to go against everything I just said earlier and say that, you have very limited time. And if you find yourself having conversations about potential partnerships with people that aren't in the same place that you are, then you end up wasting a lot of your time. So you have to come up with some sort of standard at which you're going to initiate conversation and have a meaningful conversation about that kind of collaboration.
And on that point, I think that, I think a lot of people end up trying to present a solution. I think you need to address the problem and make sure that that problem is not just a toothache, but it's a migraine. And the solution you're providing is what you're awesome at. Like, we're talking about starting companies, like very out of the gates, right? Nascent. I think it's make sure you're solving a huge pain point and you're awesome at that solution. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay. Hey, George, will you ask that question last? Sure. Very last question. That's an awesome question. A very astute question asker asked, Tracy, how do you both disrupt and report on what's going on? I believe he said, how do you both disrupt? What's he said?
Well,
Astute than I was, by the way.
we try to deliver the news in a different kind of manner. Our writing style is very important to us. The quality of our writing is very important to us. So it's not just enough to write about what's happening, but we have to do it really well so people read us. That is key. There's a lot of noise out there, and we need to distinguish ourselves. So the delivery content that we have right now, we invested in this brand new website. It's beautifully designed, lots of great illustrations and photos and everything. And we're doing various things, like I'll give you one example. We're doing a feature called Next Up. This week it's Janet McCall. She's the director of the Society for Contemporary Craft. And it's a simple question, what are you doing this week? That's all we're asking people. But by doing that, you might just read it and say, oh, that's cool, and who is this person, and what is she up to this week, and kind of interesting. It's very well read, gets tweeted a lot, pushed out a lot in social media, but we actually have a lot of motivating factors to do that. One, the primary one, is to let people know in a very friendly, user kind of way that there's a lot going on in Pittsburgh. So you might be reading about what Janet McCall is doing this week, and you might be thinking, that event Friday night sounds interesting. I might consider that too. Or you might think, here's a woman who's really out there and is really making a difference in her community, which she is. And you might want to be a little bit more like her. She might be inspiring in that sense. So these are the kind of ways that we try to influence our audience. It's not sneaky. It's just like we try to make it more palatable in a kind of a different way so that you get different perspectives and something like that. We do the same thing with events and a number of other things that we're delivering. We might come out with a new feature soon, a FOMO feature, fear of missing out, where we actually do, in terms of events, what you missed last weekend. So if you were home on your couch Friday night or just going to a local movie theater, you missed this and that, or that. But we're going to get more readers to give us their photos and make comments about what they're doing out in the city and different events and various things. So again, different kinds of perspectives, different ways to get to know the city and navigate the city. So that's a way that we report on people who are disrupting things, who are doing cool, intentional things, and we get the word across so that people read it.
Anything else from you? Okay. We do what we can in our respective spaces, but we can't operate in a vacuum. And we've had quite a change of administration lately. And with that, a lot of hopes have been built up. I understand that all of the water's going to be clean, the air is going to be fantastic, taxes will go down, unemployment will go to zero.
Marriage equality.
Yes, and the Pirates will win the World Series. But towards that end, with this administration especially, what is the role of the City of Pittsburgh in enabling a more innovative place?
Yes. I mean, as much as possible, right? Here's a chance to really position Pittsburgh as a a government that supports startups. So the city has these problems, and I guarantee you that there are a dozen startups out there that would eagerly attempt to solve these problems at a cost that is nominal for what the city would be paying an outside contractor. So we consistently petition the city to engage and think of the startups in the city as potential vendors for their data problems, for their infrastructure problems, for all that stuff.
Just to make it easier to do business in Pittsburgh, the city could have a role in that, especially for startups, as you know, so much going on in the beginning. They're also doing, Deborah Lamb is the Chief Innovation Officer. I don't know how many people are familiar with her, but just by the hiring of Deborah Lamb, I think it's a very promising sign from the administration of what kind of tone they're trying to set for the city, because she is someone charged with innovating the systems across all sectors. And some interesting things might come out of that. Other cities have done it, but it's really nice to see Pittsburgh doing it.
Move out of the way. Government needs to move out of the way and let entrepreneurs do what they do. I worked for the mayor's administration during late 1990s, and Eve Picker came into town and she said, I wanted to start doing lofts. And they were like, what do you mean? Downtown lofts. I want to change this building that's a commercial building into downtown lofts. And they're like, what do you mean? And she said, I want to make this housing. So she actually went through the whole process to change the laws so commercial buildings can be livable. Now that has spurred on all the things that are happening in downtown Pittsburgh now. So the first thing that government needs to do, move out of the way. Let entrepreneurs be entrepreneurs. Sure, you have to have laws, but you have to be flexible and change. And I think that is going to do that. So.
You have a question?
Yes, we got a question on the GTECH blog. I want to make sure we get answered. So this one's for Elaine. She's asking a question about the use of local data software outside of the city of Pittsburgh, and being somewhat familiar with the company. It's actually a company called Local Data that they work with, and they do function outside of the city, I think across the US, or at least in a few states. Could you maybe speak a little bit more to how you use it in the suburbs where this woman lives? She says it looks like an excellent idea for making smaller communities more sustainable. Maybe speak to that point.
Sure. So the company itself does, there's actually 3 co-founders. One actually operates out of Boston, one operates out of Detroit, and one operates out of San Francisco. So they are, across the board in several communities. They partner with universities, they partner with local government, and also local communities. So we're not unique in that instance, but when in our use here, as I mentioned, GTECH works throughout the county. So our parameters for the system is the county. And that's the data that has been sort of pre-uploaded for our use. What happens is they pull publicly available data. So they pull data from the county assessment office and put it into the system. What we ask comes from us. So we can create 1 survey or we can create 1,000 surveys. It can be anything from a quality of life survey where you go knocking on doors and asking your neighbors, how are you doing or what do you need in your community? Or it can be property condition, what buildings to be able to prioritize, what buildings need to be on the demolition list or what buildings need to be saved. And so that's, for our uses, we're using it more on that sort of physical asset side of, vacant land and property condition. We are and have been using it not just in the city, but also in some of the municipalities and have been talking to municipal leaders, specifically code enforcement officers, as a way to increase efficiencies in their work, because many of the municipalities have a staff of 5 and they're operating like a nonprofit where everybody has to do a little bit of everything and you really just can't get through your task list through the day. And so they're looking for ways to be more efficient and sharing services and looking at new systems. And so that's the main way that we've been working with others to look at this system. And it may require some expertise beyond ours in terms of what questions to ask in the surveys. But our goal is just to ensure that whoever is asking those questions, they're asking them in the same way, so that on the output we can start to help compare data and do an analysis on the back end.
I'm going to ask for one more question from the audience that wasn't on Twitter. Anybody want to have their questions answered? Knowing that our panelists will be out here after for some informal conversations, but
so you're going to talk about local data. I was really excited to hear the panelists. What is the most exciting and innovative technology that you use to help achieve your mission? Sure, if there's something really unique you're using on the day-to-day.
For Evive, our software developer, I think, is brilliant, and he's completely created our entire platform and backend that is entirely unique to our company. And we use it to, run our software and run our stations, but there's a lot of upside to it that we can use it for a lot of different things. And I think that, finding the people who are able to create these systems that never existed yet and use them, to your advantage, and then not only use them, but then see how far they can go. That's been really exciting for me. When I started working in this company, I had no idea what an RFID tag was. I had no idea what, CSS was, like all these things that I never, because I'm not a developer, I don't know anything. And I think, learning about what we're able to create when you find somebody, everything is digital, everything is mobile, everything is, all through here. So when you find these people that are able to create these entire systems and they have these visions, they might not necessarily be the person that's going to go out and talk about it, but I think that even if it's something that we just use internally, it's, changed how I view technology, because anything that you could think of, these developers can create. And it's been amazing to see somebody take this idea and turn it into what we have today. And I've just been, that's someone in our own company, and it's, unique to us. But I think that we're changing, habits, and how we're doing that is all based on this software.
I think from a big data perspective, there's a local startup in town called MetaMesh. And they're building these access points that automatically recognize and connect to one another. So essentially, we're helping them pilot it up in Allentown. We'll be able to have free internet that grows organically. So if you are in range of an access point that has a bandwidth donor, you can help geographically expand the area of free internet. So in early summer, with any luck, there'll be a connection from Uptown, Oakland to Allentown, and it'll have coverage off of those main sort of trunks of internet that'll be free and completely open. And what's cool about it, it's a VPN, it's a private network, but you could come along and put hardware devices right on top of it because it's wireless. So the city could put traffic monitors, you could put security cameras up, basically anything that is, has a Wi-Fi card in it, you could integrate on top of this network and essentially piggyback on those bandwidth providers that are just donating the bandwidth. So that's going to be really cool and impactful if they can get it to work.
One of the things I'm part of is an open source initiative called Startup Genome. And we're basically hoping to aggregate and open all the data as it relates to all the strategic metrics when it comes to startups, hiring, funding, firing, closing, and putting a scorecard for all the regions to aggregate themselves. So, neighborhood by neighborhood can start to see what the realistic ebbs and flows and inputs and outputs of the entire startup space are, all the way up to a macro region like the Rust Belt that we're looking at. And as currently, as it is online, it's great. It's okay. There's a lot of user input. Companies put in how many they hired, and we're pulling data from a lot of places. But I think in the next 6 months, you'll see a real wholesale change in what's available out there, along the big data and freeing all this data out there for the purposes of just people knowing more about what's going on.
How are you getting all that?
We're aggregating it through like 1,500 different sources.
Wow.
There's a lot of people helping. All right, so that was the last question from the audience. George, you had an awesome question that I think that teased out the final.
Thanks. Well, really, two questions. One, how can we, people here in the audience, and I guess beyond, help you with your missions? And second, what sort of, connections do you want to make here in Pittsburgh as well? What really would, help foster your connection?
I'll take the first part of that question. You can help me, you can help my staff out with story ideas. Like what Kit just talked about, I'm all over that. But it's like as soon as it's time to write that story, I'd like to get that story. So anything that you know about in the community, people tend to think that, we do get a ton of news releases, but everyone else is already getting those. And the best kind of news we get is word of mouth and connecting with people. So open access, just email me with ideas and what's going on. That's very helpful.
When you see a crowdfunding campaign in the city, whether it's on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, Crowdto, Crowdosaurus, give $20 to it. The lay people, everybody needs to be educated more around this idea of crowdfunding, and so that the ecosystem can be healthy. We got a lot of people with asks, but we don't have a lot of people with gifts. And use the resources that are up at the co-working space. We have a green screen, a podcasting suite. We can live stream. We give this freely to nonprofits and startups. Come use it, be part of that community, and engage us.
For us, we could use a lot of things, but I think the most valuable thing that we still kind of maintain is time. So if you have time to volunteer with us, if you have time to host an event for us, if you have time to have coffee with us and share an idea that you have, we have several volunteers in our network that are doing research or are, helping us think of new ways to connect people, or are actually just out on the ground with the shovel, helping us, plant a tree or do whatever we do. I think that's one of the most, also rewarding things that we get back. We were out this weekend and a dog walker saw us working with a bunch of kids and then came back an hour later with a different dog and 10 boxes of donuts because he saw what we were doing and wanted to, support and participate. And so things like that are really what kind of keep us happy and keep us going. So.
Yeah, and to that end, I think whenever you hear of a local startup or an idea, and if you're interested in it, don't be afraid to reach out to them and ask how you can help or get involved, because that's incredibly helpful. I mean, one of the limitations of a startup is resources and, knowledge. And sometimes we just want, 20 minutes to pick somebody's brain about an idea. And feedback is incredibly important to us because we're so close to it. And, sometimes when you get so close to something, you can't make the right decision that's best for the consumer. So I think spending 20 minutes with somebody who we wouldn't necessarily have, access to, but if you can say, oh, I would love to help, that stuff is incredibly important.
Towards that end, I think that, we're hoping that this is the first of many conversations. Obviously that, several people in the audience have as much business being on stage as the rest of us up to. So we're hoping that this creates a conversation. If you saw something you liked up here, please follow that person. If you heard something in question, I understand that they will keep Twitter up for us for the next however long we need it. So you can ask your questions and stay in touch with these folks. I want to give it up for GTECH for hosting forums like this and doing Thank each of our awesome panelists.
And thank you very much, Kit. Thank you everyone for being here. As we wrap, I have one idea that really, I think we could all collectively come together around is how do we figure out a way to get cold beer flowing to a warm room? But to that extent, it's a warm room because of all the brain power. And thank you so much for the Tech Shop for hosting, for making this happen.
Can I get a show of hands? How many people have been here before? So most of you, this is your first visit here. Awesome. If you haven't had an opportunity, we would love to give you a tour of the shop and tell you more about what's happening in here. Because we definitely want to be at home for innovation here in Pittsburgh.
It's one of the most important things in Pittsburgh.
To that extent, real quick, and we will wrap very quickly here. Just quick show of hands, how many folks in the room would classify themselves in the technology startup space? Smattering. How many folks classify themselves in the community development nonprofit space? A little bit more. How many folks are in more established businesses that are drawn to the startup and social innovation space? Good. Healthy mixture. How many folks are in the public sector? Good. So again, one of the big reasons why the Social Capital Council exists is to try to bring different pockets of the community together around shared priorities. And so this dialogue is one type of that. The type of conversation that can ensue afterwards is a big part of that. So again, thanks to you all for coming out. Quick show of hands, how many social capital council partners are there? There's a handful of folks here, right? So keep your hands up, show them. If you have questions around social capital council, these are folks to talk with. There's a handful of GTECH staff in the crowd, please raise your hand. If you have questions around some of the GTECH stuff, please feel free to ask us. And again, thank you Tech Shop, thank you Marty's Market, thank you Hop Farm, thank you Kit. You have one more thing to say?
I was just nice.
All right, thanks folks, have a nice night.